Natural bodybuilding is different, of course, or bodybuilding in general. I think the enhanced side, Ronnie Coleman had his stretch and then Phil Heath, but with natural bodybuilding, that's just not something that you see as often, unless it's like a Brian Whitacre or now Dirk's trying to do something similar, I think, right?
I mean, that's a very good point, and it's a very great topic to talk about. So one of the things that I do like and I don't like about the sport, you might not look exactly like me or Dirk or Babacar, but you could be the best you can be without drugs. And I think that's a great thing to put out there, especially for the younger generation where everyone wants to take the quick fix. The attention spans are going down, and kids should see this. They should see like that's what a natural bodybuilder is at the highest level. I think that'll be great for the next
If we're
generation.
talking about a different category here, you're talking about the elite of the elite, the professional level of natural bodybuilding, and you're going to compete. You're going to be pushing those boundaries. So if you're tuning in and you're thinking, oh, why doesn't he just train less? There's always going to be the person that says, not natty. But what do you have to say to that?
If someone thinks that I'm not natural,
Yeah, yeah. If you because I know you've gotten that for sure, right?
yeah, I do. Surprisingly, not too often the past year or so. But honestly, if someone was really about it, like if you really don't think I'm natural,
Do you feel like world's overall title, that's calling your name, you can achieve that? Do you believe that in your heart that you can do that?
I do. And I work toward it every single day. I literally give everything I have to the sport and to myself. I really want to just see how far I can get, without drugs, just to see.
I don't want to forget this. Tell us right now, when you competed at WNBF Worlds, you got the silver medal. Was that against Babacar?
That was
No,
against
that's not. Wait,
Bada
before you,
Lekan.
Bada, that's it, because Babacar's middleweight, you're
Mm,
heavyweight. My bad.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so it was against
Yeah.
Bada. Okay. All right, so that's
Mm.
going to be interesting. So you're prepping this year. I'm assuming your goal is to compete at Worlds.
I mean, always. That's
Yeah.
the big one. As of right now, we just got into January. I figure I'm probably going to start prep maybe late March, early April. I did accrue some like little aches and pains that I'm kind of working through at the moment, but that's just like I mean, we'll get into my training. I have to think of how many sets I was doing for quads at the height of my volume. I want to say 36 to 40 a week. And it was getting to the point where my joints were like, okay, we need to slow down. So we might have pushed a little too hard. But that's sports. You have to test your limits. And I accrued a little bit of a knee, like tendinopathy type of thing in my right knee, which is almost like 99% better now. And I'm training fine. So I have like 12 weeks before prep to make sure I regain everything. I increase my volume to where I had it or roughly close to it. And then I should be prepping. But that's honestly the only reason I wouldn't prep is if I feel like I wasn't healthy going into prep. But at the moment, it seems like it's going to be like a 90% chance I'm prepping this year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Aside from the aches and pains, but like you said, that's quite normal when you're competing at the highest possible level. I just spoke with Oscar, and if you're listening to this, that episode already came out, so go and check that out. But Oscar
Mm.
Moscat, who competed at Worlds recently, and he was saying, yeah, man, I don't walk into a training session always feeling like fully recovered. Like that's just not how it goes when you're at this level, right? So if we're
Mhm.
talking about a different category here, you're talking about the elite of the elite, the professional level of natural bodybuilding, and you're going to compete. You're going to be pushing those boundaries. So if you're tuning in and you're thinking, oh, why doesn't he just train less? Because he doesn't actually let you answer that. I want you to
Mm.
answer that. That's better if you answer that. So someone's listening, they're like, "Oh, you're accumulating these aches and pains regularly or consistently. Well, why don't you just decrease the frequency or decrease the volume?" What is your take on that? And maybe provide some context around when you might not do that.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So like I'd say really the only ache it would be my right knee. That was really it. And everything else really feels great. Again, now it's pretty much healed. But when I was first feeling that ache, I was like, okay, so I'm feeling an ache. Maybe don't push it. So what we might do is we might reduce the relative intensity per set. Let's say I'm usually doing an 8 RPE, knock it down to a 5 or 6. Keep that movement going, keep the blood flowing into the muscle, lower the intensity, see how you feel. It's still aching the next week. Okay, let's cut volume by 30%. Let's cut volume by 40%. And you gauge it. Like, is it getting better? Is it staying the same? And then you just move forward. It didn't seem to be getting better with those adjustments. So I had to see a physio. They did an amazing job. They gave me exercises to do and during training and on my off days, and that really helped. So with the volume that was less, the intensity that was less, and the introduction of the physio exercises, that helped me tremendously. And then we just basically stayed on that path until I'm pretty much better. So I think I'm probably as strong as I've ever been on quads right now, even though I'm doing less volume. So you might say, okay, well, your fatigue is less, so obviously you're stronger because you're doing less sets. But I think I'm pretty much back, and now we're just slowly increasing the sets, incorporating more like double leg quad work. I'm doing a lot of one leg stuff to make sure that my right is matching my left because my right was the injured knee. But that's a great question. Yeah, you have to call an audible from now and again, especially for me. You know how my high volume goes. I do a ton of volume. Something's bound to hurt. I mean, I'm not a robot. At least I don't think I am. So, you got to make those adjustments. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And for those tuning in, if you didn't tune into part one with Gary, highly recommend you go and listen to that as well, because that's where he dove into a lot of the mindset around why he trains with such a high amount of volume. Like, I don't know if you remember that, Gary, because it was like 2 years ago, I think we spoke, but I can't believe it's been that long, by the way. That's crazy. Time flies, hey?
Crazy.
Yeah.
I know, man.
But definitely go and check that out if you haven't already, because it was quite a while ago. So then you can get a little bit of
Mm.
that background story. But yeah, that's interesting as far as the work you did with the physio. You mentioned you had some specific exercises. What did that look like? Just in brief, just a quick summary, because maybe someone's curious about that.
Okay, so with the reduction in the intensity and the volume we went over, also when I removed heavy compound lifts from quads to kind of let my knee heal, what I did was I implemented blood flow restriction training, and
Mm.
I did that on a leg press with one leg. That allowed me to retain muscle as well as let my joints heal. So that was a huge thing that we implemented as well. Some of the physio exercises, we were doing Spanish squats, which is excellent for knee tendinopathy. We're doing wall sits, things like that. And I was doing maybe 6 sets a day, 5 days a week. So we were really pushing those physio exercises. Like this wasn't necessarily supposed to feel great. Like we were pushing it. And I think that my tendons really healed from those exercises mainly. Those were the big ones, those
Okay.
two.
And
Yeah.
that along with the reduction in the volume and the intensity, right? For the lower body, specifically for the
Exactly.
quads. Okay. But you were still able
Yes.
to load like knee flexion, like for your hams, and you were still doing those exercises like you were pushing the envelope on those still?
Yeah, like deadlifts, I was good. Leg curls, I was good. Calves, pretty much everything else for quads, I was okay.
Okay.
Or
Okay,
for legs, I
cool.
should say, I was
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so bad. Like you
Mm-mm.
navigated through that quite well.
Yes. As we pushed, like real hard, this is the most I've ever done for quads because to give people a little bit of a background, quads was probably the reason why I lost in 2022 because they just weren't big enough. Now it's funny because quads might be my most genetically gifted muscle, and I just really didn't devote much time to it because I had more important muscles to bring up, like my back, which was my weakest. But now we brought everything up over the years, and my quads actually fell behind. So these past 2 years has been just strictly training quads. That's number one. Number two is triceps, shoulders, and back. Those are like the secondary and tertiary muscles I wanted to bring up. And what does that do, right? What is that? So quad sweep and then lats, shoulders, triceps. That's the X frame. So we noticed versus Bada that he had a better X frame, not necessarily because of his upper body, because I feel like my upper body was more imposing than his, but his sweep. That was it. So we are, diligently working on fixing that for this year, hopefully, when I compete.
Bro, absolutely. Like, what's interesting is that I'm gonna put a photo up on the screen for YouTube. For your quads, like that's so crazy because the detail from like last time you competed at Worlds, it was amazing the development you have in your lower body. So to hear you say that is again, this is like a next level. We're nitpicking at things so that way you can be the best in the world. Like that's a different level, right?
100%. 100%. It's at the highest level, it's a game of inches. Everyone looks good. Everyone has a lot of muscle. Everyone's ripped with striated glutes. You need to find those like little things to like set you above everybody else. And thankfully, I had some good judges. They came up to me like, man, that was so close. Honestly, could have gone either way. I had a lot of people saying I won as well. So it definitely wasn't far off. They're like, just get those quads sweeping more, and you're going to have a really good chance of winning next time.
You know what's interesting about Worlds is that you came second to Bada. So if you happen, say Bada wasn't there and you happen to then you would have won first and foremost. And then you would have probably won the overall that year, right? Like that's how that goes usually, because you came
Hmm.
second to the overall champ. But that's not to say that's how it always goes. But it's
Right.
always an interesting thought because same thing with Oscar this year, and then obviously with Babacar taking the overall, right? So it's an interesting thing to think about. But
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And you bring Oscar up a couple times. So he actually competed against me at the 2022 Monster Mash, was it?
and you beat him,
Right?
right?
Well, here's the weird thing. He
Okay.
was in a lower weight class, and I didn't
Ah,
really see him. So he must have lost to his name escapes
Brian.
me, but
Is it Brian
is it
DaCosta?
Brian?
No,
No, you're talking about 2023.
that's right. My bad.
Yes, you are. So in 2022, there was a lighter weight guy. His name escapes me. I was talking to him at the competition, but I believe he beat Oscar. And then I saw Oscar recently at Worlds. I'm like, this guy looks amazing. Like, how did he not make it to the overall at the Monster Mash? So I'm assuming his conditioning was off, but I'm not sure. I didn't see pictures in the Monster Mash in 2022. But man, he looks great. He was phenomenal, that guy.
Bro, that again, different weight category, but this is the thing with natural bodybuilding. It would be so great to have all you guys competing in the same year, right? Because sometimes
Mm.
there's competitors that take years off, right? But that's sports, not everybody's always competing the same time, right? Then
Yeah.
again, depends on the sport. Obviously, when you're talking about basketball, football, you're coming back every year unless you're retired, right? So yeah, natural bodybuilding is different, of course, or bodybuilding in general. I think the enhanced side they're more likely you're going to see these guys come back every year. Ronnie Coleman had his stretch and then Phil Heath. But with natural bodybuilding, that's just not something that you see as often unless it's like a Brian Whitacre or now Dirk's trying to do something similar, I think, right?
I mean, that's a very good point, and it's a very great topic to talk about. So one of the things that I do like and I don't like about the sport is I can't compete every year because I won't grow. So I'm not going to get better. And I guess you could look at it the other way, like, okay, well, you could stay in the off season longer and enjoy food and enjoy life and all that other stuff. Honestly, if I could have it my way, I would compete not every year, I would compete every month. If that was a thing, imagine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
imagine like you're in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can compete every month or two. The fighting sports, every week is football, right? They do it every week. Oh, that'd be awesome because I love to compete, but that's just the nature of physiology. We can't have, everything. When you're doing it
Right.
natural, you just can't. But I should also say with Dirk, he seems to recover very well after competitions, and he probably gets his hormones up pretty quick. His body fat set point's probably low, from what he has told me as well. So he could probably get away with competing more. I don't think that I could get away with competing every year and still grow like him. I don't think that'd be very tough for me and my body type. Maybe every 2 years in the near future, as I get older and I really want to like push like how many titles I could win or what have you, then I'll start competing more often. But for now, I needed to grow a lot to get better. So I took, 2 years, and by the time I compete this year, it'll be 3 years that I would have off from competing.
Yeah. Do you feel like world's overall title, that's you, like that's calling your name, you can achieve that? Do you believe that in your heart that you can do that?
I do, and I work toward it every single day. I literally give everything I have to the sport and to myself. I really want to just see how far I can get, without drugs, just to see. I think I'm just starting to hit my prime. I'm going to stay as healthy as I possibly can, and if I can do that, then I think what I brought in 2022 is not going to look very good to what I look like this year and then a few years later. So I'm more excited just bringing my best and then just displaying it to the world. But like, yes, like you can do this natural, and this is natural, and you can do your form of it. You might not look exactly like me or Dirk or Babacar, but you could be the best you can be without drugs. And I think that's a great thing to put out there, especially for the younger generation where everyone wants to take, the quick fix and like, the attention spans are going down. And so I think kids should see this. They should see like that's what a natural bodybuilder is at the highest level. I think that'll be great for the next generation.
I love that. And that's what this is all about, man, as you already know. So we're gonna put
Yeah.
this out there and everyone's gonna see this on the YouTube and you already know photos are gonna be plastered up there as we're talking. So that way people can get an idea. And there's always gonna be the person that says not natty, But what do you have to say to that? Because I was just, again, I bring this up because I was talking with Oscar about it just recently. And
Uh-huh.
I would love to get your thoughts on that as well, because you're going to have that, especially the heavyweight guys, the heavyweight, middleweight guys who just look, it's just a slightly different level than, when someone gives their weight, like a Dirk or something like that. You're like, okay, he's, 160 pounds or 55 pounds. I think he's 140 on stage, right? I think off season he's in the 160s.
Is
And
he?
then
I don't know his
yeah, he's a
weight actually. I should
bantamweight.
know
Yeah,
it.
he's a bantamweight. So I think he's under 150. I think I
Oh,
could,
okay.
if I remember correctly, because he's a bantamweight. Then you're like, okay, once you get the weight, you're like natural, right? Unless you're
Uh-huh.
really just a rookie and you have no idea how this works. But if we're talking like the heavyweights, then the questions start coming out. The Doug Millers, Gary, right? You got even like guys like Babacar, like middleweight, heavyweight. Then the questions start popping up. But what do you have to say to that?
If someone thinks that I'm not natural,
Yeah, yeah. If you because I know you've gotten that for sure, right?
yeah, yeah, I do. Surprisingly, not too often the past year or so. Actually, I got a lot of it on Reddit. So I never posted on Reddit before, but when I did, I was like, oh, this is how Reddit works. Like I got the most hate, the worst comments ever about being natural and, or claiming natural and they're saying that I'm not or whatever. But honestly, if someone was really about it, like if you really don't think I'm natural, I like to make money. So let's make a bet. Any point. Like, we'll put a certain amount of money in escrow. Let's go to the lab. Let's get blood work done and let's do this. Like,
There
that's
it
the only
is.
way, right?
So does it bother you
Perfect.
though? Does it bother you at all? Like when
No,
people,
no, no.
okay.
No, I mean, maybe when I was younger, I got steroid comments when I was 16, a lot of it. So, I mean, like, I just always got it, you know?
Yeah.
I just always had a good physique. So it's like,
You're a big dude, right? Like like for okay, so the listeners, you're what, 5'9"?
yeah. So, like, I'm 5'9.5" around there.
Okay.
And right now I'm about 218, pretty
Yeah,
lean.
so
Yeah.
that's another level. Again, you can't compare because there's a lot that goes into it, structure. Just there's a lot that goes into proportion, symmetry, where your muscles attach. All that stuff can influence how you look on stage. But again,
Mm.
from a genetic standpoint, for how much muscle your physique can hold, that's what we're talking about here. You're 5'9" at 200 and probably pretty like your abs are still showing, like you still have pretty
I'm
low
pretty
body
lean right
fat.
now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm pretty lean for sure.
And like you compete at what weight, Gary?
So I believe, let's say I was 196 in 2022 at Worlds about,
So there you go.
but I feel like I'd be over
That's
200 now, I think.
wow. Wow. So
Yeah, I
again,
think
like
so.
this is next level because there's not too many guys walking around able to do that at your
Hmm.
height. Like that's rare. That's more rare. That's the 1% of the 1% if we're gonna play that game, right?